I know. It's too good to be true. If everything's gonna work today, it means that it's the last day. Huh?
So,
Okay, welcome back. You can go right here. Did you see that? Questions before I proceed? Okay. Today is Monday, wow, there's feedback, huh? December 11th. Let's see. So what today we're gonna do is a review. We have Exam 2. Wednesday, December 13th. Bring with you number 2 pencils. Bring with you pencils. You can have one sheet. For acronyms. Bring with you an envelope. And with it your peer and self-review. You need within that peer and self-review the task completed of each member, including yourself. And a score 1 through 100 for each. Any questions? Yes, Kim.
Does this letter have to be like super formal, or can we just say like bullet points?
You can do both. The easiest way is just, type it up and then print it out and then put it in a envelope, sealed. And bring that to class, okay? Everybody straight on that part. As we said before, the projects will be due, they have to be uploaded by Wednesday, the 20th. At the end of the day, all your applications, this is getting a lot too. We're gonna do a review. Some questions. Okay, if you go to the assignments.
Oh, wait, I have a
Yes.
question.
Yeah.
Is that our last class on Wednesday?
I'm gonna be, the exam is over on Monday. I'm gonna be here regularly scheduled to meet with groups for your updates for your project. So I'll be helping students with your projects, what you need. I'll also be able to give you feedback. Is there anything else that you missed? And then on Wednesday, you'll upload that, okay?
Are we presenting one last time on Wednesday? Or?
You don't need to unless I told you need to, do it again. You can do that, but I'll be here on Monday and Wednesday, both days, here in the classroom. So if you'd like to show me on Monday, you want me to work it out or give you feedback on it. On Wednesday, you want me to give you feedback on it, I'll do the same. So I'm part of everybody's group, so I'm gonna be responsible that I'll be here for you. Okay? What other issues? Is there anything else? Did I answer your question? Okay. Okay. So, let's talk about the open-ended. It'll be, the format of the exam will be the same as it was last time. It'll be two, parts. The first part will be multiple choice questions, mainly taken from the textbook of going over terms. And they'll be the same format as before. The second part will be open-ended questions. We're gonna go over again for the second test, which I think is so critical, is the security chapter, which is chapter 11. And last time I told you to be prepared for security questions about the difference between administrative what else? Controls,
There's administrative, physical, and technical.
physical and technical,
Safeguards.
right? Controls, safeguards. The other part I asked you to do in the readings, which if you go to course documents, go to readings, and the first article here on what are the 12 HIT fallacies and implications for design and implementations. Is a good article for you to read, and many times technology for technology's sake is not appropriate.
What was the second one? Sorry, you said that, 12 HIT fallacies?
Yeah, and what are the 12 HIT fallacies? And what I talked about is many times health information systems fail. We have a lot of technology that people are implementing, but they're not successful, because what is our final goal?
Interoperability.
Well, what's our final goal? Interoperability is a means to get to what?
Patient safety,
Patient safety, and what else?
make money.
Like care coordination.
Basically, effective healthcare, getting the population to be healthier, right, to serve our population with better healthcare. So besides making money, right, if I make money and I have patients having worse healthcare, right, that's not
That's who's the goal.
huh? That could be a goal for some people, right? But that's not our ways to do it. So one of the things that you can think about here is those 12 HIT fallacies and why information systems fail. And a lot of times, what's the crucial part for information systems failing in health information systems is there isn't a coordination between a number of end users and the developers, between the providers. So it seems to have issues. In getting involved. We talked about agile development, which is getting to market, getting feedback quicker. And we can do that.
Can you go over what was the overall troubles?
What was the what?
The troubles that you said?
Well, the trouble is there isn't coordination between information systems developers and what's needed in the marketplace, what's needed for giving better health care. There isn't coordination between the providers, between the end users. This is irritating me as I go. Let me just try to do something. Let's see what happens. that better?
Yeah.
Okay. So there isn't a coordination. If I think about what's my end goal is to provide more efficient, better health care. I need to work together as a team. I need to work more rapidly to get it out to market. And I have to be aware of safety, I have to be aware of security. So I'm gonna make a list here. So, one of the things that we need to know is, let me enlarge my font. Is that good? Can you see it? We need to talk about data, and data comes in a number of different ways. We know we have an abundance of data. The whole idea is a lot of times it's raw data. And then we have processed data, which is knowledge, right? And what are the issues here? We need to have many times creating insights. And those insights, then I'm able to do data analytics. Do forecasting, data mining, what we call AI, and a version of AI we call what? Machine learning. When we talked about data, we also talked about the idea of structured versus non-structured. What's the difference and who cares? What is it?
It's unstructured, you can't, it's like a free text, so it's harder to collect multiple, it's when you're trying to analyze multiple patients in a large amount, it's much harder because you have to do it manually as opposed to.
Well, it doesn't necessarily be manual, but definitely structured data
Easier to analyze.
is easier to analyze than unstructured data, right? Structured data is easier to plan ahead of time. Structured data is used in what we call relational databases, remember? We talked about relational. I'm gonna use DB for databases. Remember, that's the most frequent type of database. It's the opposite of ad hoc, it's pre-planned. We can do queries to the database. And the most common query language is then SQL, right? We talked about the structured query depth language. Now, many times, for instance, is don't plan it in advance. I call it ad hoc. make ad hoc requests, I may not have those elements, and I use non-structured queries. Non-structured queries, for instance, when I have, for instance, the health provider transcribe his or her visit. In this case, when it's non-structured, we need non-structured tools. One of the non-structured tools that we use is, instead of SQL, what's it called? No SQL, remember we talked about it? Or non-structured query language. In this case, we're not just dealing with predefined, not predefined. We may not just be talking about not just tables. We're talking about videos. We want to do, for instance, facial recognition, right? Examples, find me all the time when a patient makes certain gestures or looking a certain way or having a certain gait, or a mole looks in a certain position, or certain characteristics. Videos are an example of this, and what's used in this case is machine learning, or ML. Artificial intelligence is being used in this case. Facial recognition. These are kind of like the insights. So we've seen something before, for instance, that was more of the state of the art of EHRs with modernizing medicine. But the problem with something like modernizing medicine is, to use it effectively, you have to use it according to its flow of questions and their predefined elements. So within the structured databases, or what we call relational databases, we talk about relational databases. We talk about tables, and tables have what? Tables have records, which are like rows, right? And the columns are what? Are attributes. Many times these attributes are broken down to what they call elements. And these elements then, many times, are granular in nature. What does that mean? So if I had an element as name, that element may not be good. I may have to break down, make it a better element as first name, and another element as last name. So my elements are broken down to what we call data granularity. We talked about, we'll review again the security measures. When we talk about the security measures, review the security rule. And what we call the CIA triad. And what is that? The CIA stand for? Huh? confidentiality, what else? The I for what?
Access?
Integrity. And the A for accessibility. And what's the meaning of that? The meaning is that in all security foundations, what I wanna do is I wanna be able still to use the data. Those that need to know, need to have appropriate accessibility to it. It shouldn't be so difficult that I can't do my job because I can't get to the data I need. I can't do the job because I can't do the appropriate query. I have to, my security department made it so secure that I cannot do my job, that I have a need to know, and I can't do that. However, on the other side is confidentiality, where that personal health information needs to be protected, and only those persons that have the need to know are able to see that. And also, I'm able to know within my data possession what should be kept secure and what can be left open to the public. And when I'm dealing with it, it's the same thing, for instance, when I'm dealing with financial information. And integrity allows me that I can rely that the data that I am retrieving is accurate, and I, as the end user, can rely on it. And it is updated and it is timely. And it is complete. We talk about cloud computing, a way to gain access to my data. We talk about something called computing on premises. We talk about something called the LAN and a WAN. So computing on premises means that the physical computers reside in the location that I, the user, am in. Storage is available there as well. The advantage of computing on premises is I, as an organization, have more direct governance, and I have more controls. The disadvantage of computing on premises is I, as an organization, have to assure that I have the proper personnel to provide adequate security and confidentiality, integrity, and accessibility. The advantage of the computing is that I'm in control of purchasing the hardware and the software needed. The disadvantage is that when there are updates to the hardware and software, I, as an organization, am required to do the proper updates and purchases. So if you think about the major hacks that have occurred lately, many times they occurred because updates were not done in a timely fashion. For instance, remember the Equifax we talked about? That Equifax, they were told that there needed to be an update needed to be done on their, what they called web server, on their server, on premises. They were told supposedly in the beginning of the year, and it was by July, it was not still done. And they were hacked, and supposedly, the story is, millions and millions of records were downloaded. Anybody hear about the Uber hack? Let's type it in to Google. Who's ever taken an Uber? I have. Huh? So what happened? If I look at Uber hack, right, protect your identity,
57
company,
million.
huh?
It says 57 million users.
Right. So if you look at this, right, you got from Bloomberg, you got the New York Times, everybody, Uber hid, not only this, Uber concealed a massive hack that exposed data of 57 million users, right? And drivers in October 2016 failing to notify the individuals and regulators, bad enough, right? The company acknowledged on Tuesday, Uber also confirmed it had paid the hackers responsible $100,000 to delete it. Huh?
So they didn't use the information they got?
What?
So they
Well, supposedly the story, and I always say supposedly, because I wasn't there, right?
Mhm.
But if you think about it, it's unbelievable. Uber then hid that they had in 2016 had a breach, and they went out and they paid the hackers to delete their stolen data. Can you believe that? It is just, you can't believe, undisclosed, stole 57 million and kept the data breach secret for more than a year. Unreal, huh? You guys got, it can't be done, right? For paying, the deal was arranged by the, listen to this, the company security officer. So you're gonna hire the security officer, right? And under the watch of the former chief executive, and notice you say former chief executive, right? Travis Kalanick, according to several current and former employees who spoke on condition anonymity because the details were not proper. The security officer, who was that? Joe Sullivan was fired. Mr. Kalanick was forced out, although he remains on Uber's board. This is just amazing to me. 2 hackers stole the data, including phone numbers, emails, addresses, and names from third-party server, and then approached Uber. They approached Uber, so they didn't even do the investigation. Do you understand? They didn't go out and search and say, who are these guys, right? I'm gonna go out and look under cars or something. And they demanded $100,000 to delete their copy. Uber acquiesced, and the company tracked down the hackers and pushed them to sign a non-disclosure agreement. I like it. Among thieves, you're gonna ask them to sign a non-disclosure agreement, right? Like they're gonna abide by it. And to further conceal the damage, Uber's executives also made it appear as if the payout had been part of a bug bounty. Anybody ever hear of a bug bounty? What's a bug bounty?
Is that like when you like pay people to find bugs in your app?
Yes. So you remember how we used to talk about the white hats and the black hats? So what companies do, you remember we had a couple of companies here come, and their duty was to see where you're vulnerable, and they, with your permission, would hack into your computer and say, you know what, you're vulnerable here. Just like your house, you know, you'll have somebody come around and you say, you know, those the high bushes there, I decide, you know, go ahead and cut it. Or, you know, somebody can go through the window. So this is just amazing here, that they then, in order to appear, they made that 100,000 like they were bounties, a common practice in which they pay hackers to attack their software. The details, right? were announced, you know, and was chosen, none of this was here. A spokesman, right? The breach, listen to this is a good one. The breach is also a black mark for Mr. Sullivan, who was a prominent figure in the information security industry. Mr. Sullivan joined Uber as the company's first security officer after serving head of security at Facebook for some years. So if I were Uber, I'm in Silicon Valley, wouldn't it be great to hire somebody from Facebook that was for 7 years there? But listen to this. Unlike many cybersecurities, Mr. Sullivan, you're listening, folks? You can't make this up. Right? Mr. Sullivan joined Uber as the company's, right? Mr. Sullivan, unlike many cybersecurity executives, Mr. Sullivan was previously a lawyer and studied cyber law at the University of. He began his career in technology as a federal prosecutor, right? Decided to join, and then they said other employees, the company's decision, and it took them. Mr. Sullivan then was able, you know, this is amazing to me, because Mr. Sullivan then took one course in cyber law at the university and was now, you can see how he was now there. So then they start talking about what happened here. Unbelievable. So the idea of having now going in, this is like you couldn't make it up. You know, if I saw this in a movie and I didn't know it, I said, oh, that is, nobody would do that, right? Go in, pay the head of cybersecurity, maybe somebody else, but the head of cybersecurity, going ahead and paying these guys, and they come to them, and then saying non-disclosure, right, sign this. Thieves, sign this. And what if they, so this is too good to be true. Listen, this is, and look at the, by demanding, listen to this, while it's not illegal, notice this is interesting, while it's not illegal to pay money to hackers, Uber may have violated several laws by demanding that the hackers destroy the stolen data. Uber may have violated FTC rule on breach disclosure prohibits company from destroying any forensic evidence in the course of the investigation. Because remember, just like CSI, anybody ever see that TV show where they have to preserve the evidence? Here they're supposed to do that. So the company also violated state of breach, not disclosing the theft of Uber's drivers' stolen data. Right? Uber would have required the California state to disclose the data license if its data was not encrypted.
So was there any like legal?
Was there any what?
Was anyone prosecuted?
Well, right now they haven't.
So no formal.
But Uber has hired a former general counsel from the NSA as an advisor, retained a security firm, right, and plans, but the damage has already been done. So we don't know if they have. Mr. Sullivan, who, by the way, was here a couple of years ago, giving a talk at a security conference. And it was interesting that somebody came, you know, one of the folks asked me to join them for dinner one time. They said, you know, this guy, he's really great now, we're so proud of him. He's a UM grad and he worked at Facebook and he's now gonna be working at Uber. And he's gonna give the talk. Do you wanna go out to dinner with him? And fortunately or unfortunately, I was teaching that evening. Just so I remember. Unbelievable, huh? So you can see here that here. So think the same thing with hospitals. So when hospitals were paying ransomware, that was like what? Paying hackers, so that was not illegal. Unbelievable, huh?
So paying for healthcare data that's been hacked isn't.
Paying the hackers is not illegal, but what is going to be illegal possibility is if you ask those hackers, go ahead and delete that information, right, and not reporting it to authorities.
So you'd have to report it to the OCR.
Well, to the FTC and things like that, probably, you have to report it to, right, the ONC, right, the ONC.
Oh, yeah,
Possibilities,
Office
right,
of
that I,
Civil
but,
Rights.
right. And you have to report it to the appropriate authorities, because it was theft of data, right? If I've reported it, but these folks didn't report it, they didn't ask them, those guys that came to them demanding money, go ahead and not only give it back to me, but delete it. And sign a non-disclosure, but you won't tell anybody that we're doing this illegal act.
It was still brought to the public's knowledge.
What?
It was still brought to the public's knowledge. so-
Well, I think it became, they have a new CEO now in Uber. So as they're doing an investigation, I don't know how this came out, who knows, you know, there's a, like, it almost sounds like a Weinstein kind of thing, you know, after they do non-disclosures, other people start talking, you know, who knows? Even when you tell somebody non-disclosure doesn't mean, and other people in organizations know, it could be, you know, whistleblowers, who knows how it came out, but it's in the press. Didn't do really well for Uber, right? And some of those investors are trying to get out, you know, and they're not getting as much money as they would have before. So, that's why it's so important. So think about those computing on premises, then noticing the difference between my local area networks, my wide area networks. And once I have internet browser access, I have what I call markup languages. What are the markup languages that we know? ML, we have acronyms, right? ML stands for what? Markup language. It also stands for machine learning, but it's also markup language. So what are some of the markup languages that we talked about here in class? Hmm? This is a hint.
HTML.
Wow, what a class, okay? I'm gonna miss you. Okay,
We're
HTML.
gonna miss you.
Well, you can come back. You always can come back and see me next year, right? Some of you are. Okay, HTML, so it's hypertext markup language. What's another one?
XML.
XML. Okay. Another version of XML, what's a, basically for healthcare, what's a version of XML?
HL7. See, we did learn something.
We know to talk in cocktail parties, we can throw this out and everybody will be excited. Okay, so in this case, what is it and who cares? Basically, HTML is for what? HTML is the most prevalent, right? Any web page you see, you've done, a number of you have done fantastic web pages, very convincing, very compelling web pages, right? And what's the language of presentation is HTML. So that's the markup languages for presentation. It tells me how my fonts are, it's gonna give me my text, it's gonna present and my images, my videos. That's HTML. XML is what? Extensible markup language, and how is that different? It's a good question for the test, right? What's the difference and who cares? You want me to do all the work today, huh? Amir, I think I got your cold. I'm blaming you, but it's going around everywhere. You know, everybody's getting sick. I'm just getting on with this one. Okay,
You define your own custom
custom what? You got half
markup
of it.
language.
Not your own language, but what? Your wrong one. What did I say those, in between those, brackets are called? Greater than and left-hand side, what are they called? This is called what? A tag. If I look at a tag, like here, you see up here, this says HTML, right? A tag, HTML has, and you can put in your notes, HTML has predefined tags. Nobody makes up these tags. That's what you were talking about, right, Carly?
Yeah, sure.
So that's what, I'm just gonna help you out. You mind? I'm part of your
No.
group. Okay, so what I'm talking about, what Carly and I are talking about is that all markup languages have tags. HTML has predefined tags about the data. So it's gonna have a title, right? It's gonna tell me the beginning, and many times it'll have just a slash and the name of the tag, and it'll be like readings, right? BT 450, this is gonna be the text here. And then it will have some JavaScript, and we talked about JavaScripting what? Anybody remember? These are markup languages. We have scripting languages, and one's called JavaScript. And JavaScript,
Isn't it great?
it's a programming language used for the web that presents the logic. So that's the language that presents the logic. So if you had to pay on Amazon, right, and it's asking you credit card, MasterCard, Visa, American Express, PayPal, we need logic. If it's MasterCard, you fill it out this way. If it's PayPal, you fill it out this way. That's logic. Taking your sum, asking what state you are, and then multiplying, and then applying the state sales tax requires JavaScript. It requires some calculations. Everybody with me? HTML just presents the data, the look and the feel of the data. So you can see here that look and the feel of the data is going to be that HTML. XML has no predefined tags. The user, or the person that's writing, or the group of people that are writing the XML decides what their tags will be. So let's think about it. If we're in healthcare, they will have then their own tags. What are going to be their tags? Their tags are going to be all my demographic data about my patients for admissions. There'll be a date of birth, right, of insurance, address, next of kin. And then there'll be different departments, for instance, the radiology department, that will have their own set of fields. Think about it, it's almost tags. Could be another name for it, could be like fields. And I give it tag names. And what's the purpose of it? Who cares? The purpose of XML, extensible markup language, the word extensible means that you can add on to the markup language to allow you to do searches on your own. Or that will help then in those tags, will help in, for instance, search engines do those more efficient searches. So if I have XML or HL7, what's the advantage is in inoperability then, I can have, if we name those tags the same, then if I go from one system to another system, if the tag names are the same, I can then convert my patient number and my patient number in both systems, and I will get the correct data. I will get SSN, Social Security, and Social Security. But if I just have patient number, somebody may have patient number and that's their Social Security number, and patient number in another hospital may be a number that they just created on their own. Just like C number. You know how we have C numbers here? Another institution may not have something called C number. And it may not be the same, right? Your C number here is completely different than it would be another number. Why don't they use SSN here? Why don't they just ask for your SSN?
Could easily get.
Security.
One, security, and what else? What else? Does everybody at the university have an SSN? No. International students don't. A lot of, some international students do. If, for instance, as a matter of fact, I'm looking for employees for next year, if you work with me, and a lot of times international students like to work for me because once they start working in the university, then they can get an SSN. So there's a number of reasons for security purposes, and also we talk about it wants to be an element. What did I say that element has to be? It has to be granular that I would be able for an identifier. So that's what I mean by XML and the markup language and the differences. So what's the problem here is that they have these health standards. Standards for information exchange. And in the United States and elsewhere, they don't exist universally. So this is what they need to really do more. We also talk about, and we were having a difficulty time when we started talking about databases. We also talked about application software. And system software. So a lot of times you'll hear the word, I'm an application software programmer or developer, and I'm a system software program developer. What's the difference and who cares? A system software is basically, or is the operating system. People dealing with the operating system. So who has Apple device? Right, raise your hand. You have an Apple device, you have an operating system that resides on your laptop, and you have an operating system that resides on your phone. Are they the same operating system? No. But they're two operating systems. And the same thing, if you have a Windows PC, it's the same thing. If you have, who has an Android phone, right? You have an Android phone. An Android phone is, Android is what? Is a version of an operating system, right? That's different from iOS. And notice that operating system, who cares, is when people are developing an app, right? We all know what apps, some of you have really developed the beginning of some nice apps, right? It depends in order to run it of what operating system it is. So a lot of times people say, I'll start off my app to run on iOS, and then later on I'll go to Android to run it, or I'll run it on Android and not to iOS. So that's the difference between a system software programmer, or application developer, and an application software, you know it in terms of your apps. What else? I think that's it. I'm happy to answer any of your questions. What questions do you have?
It's gonna be on the chapter 7 through 12, correct?
7 is what? Let me make sure, what's 7?
So you have like 8,
8 there,
9, 10,
11, 12.
7 is system acquisitions.
System
so 6 chapters instead of 5.
Okay, what else? Anything else? Yes,
So
Kim.
there's gonna be two open-ended questions, basically?
Yeah, I think that, I'll try to. We'll see how we do in time, yeah, but no more than 2. On security and also on, basically think about, how to get successful systems in IT, how to get, what are barriers to implementation. I think that article is a good one to, read, what are, you know, what are the fallacies? Yes,
Around, is it gonna be the same number of questions as last time
I
around?
don't remember how many questions, more or less.
Okay.
Don't hold me to it, you know what I mean?
Okay.
I'm being recorded, so I'm gonna make sure you
Is it
don't
the
take me to
same
court,
style?
you know what I mean? But around the same, you know? I don't think the problem is we won't run out of time, you know what I mean? It's not gonna be, but you can see a smattering will be the same format. So I think there should be less anxiety, you know, the first test is more anxiety because just what is gonna be there, you know? I don't know even, I don't have a clue, you know? So you get anxious and you don't know what you're doing. So I think people have an idea. And also I didn't wanna make it cumulative, I wanted to make it just on this part. And really the first part, we've gotten used to the terminology, but you can go out there and, converse, like you said. You can even ask, you'll know, for instance, when I'm gonna need now a database and somebody says I'm using MySQL, you know that it's what? It's open source, that it's popular, right? And that I want a database, because I'm gonna have a database, I'm gonna have to retrieve information I want somebody to do, what they call the back end,
Okay.
right? And what I want you to do is that you'll be able to work in groups and find groups that you can work with or you can deal with and you can see what's around. And that's what's so exciting here in this healthcare arena. It's moving so quickly in terms of technology that it really hopefully can help us deal with it. So Bradley, you wanna just, I asked Bradley to bring his device. You wanna just give an overview of it, what you can show, what you can do.
So
You wanna come over here and you can go in front? Cause I think everybody was kinda curious.
So let's see, open up the app. Can I put the video on the app on the booth to show on the screen?
And you wanna do, how
Because it's gonna
you-
be tough for people to see this.
Okay, so we can do a document camera. Will it help here?
So,
this is it. It's pretty self-explanatory. You wear it like this. It has different sizes where you can adjust it. I don't want to adjust it because it fits my
Okay.
head now.
Yeah,
Actually,
done.
I haven't adjusted it. So you can go back and forth anyway.
And this
Just
is
like
called
anything
what?
else. This is called the Muse. And so you put it on like this, and it's essentially, anyone can use it, cause you can adjust it and then, you can watch this to make sure that it works with your, size, and then,
Let's see if we can see it.
where's the video? Right there?
Yeah, okay.
So you can see with the glare. So you can push start a session. Says which headband model do you have, right, and you turn it on, that would be helpful. So you turn it on. It links it up, it uses your Bluetooth. And you can choose how long. So now it's gonna do a quality check. And it shows these colors. I'm gonna get it with a better glare.
Is that better or no?
The control panel, you can like zoom it down.
You can zoom, yeah. Let's see in the zoom.
I have no idea how to zoom. I have no idea what.
Here we can focus auto on. If you wanna do it, we want bright, oh, the brightness. Is that better?
Okay, then you see that how it's kind of moving? It'll sense, and when it gets the right color, it says that it's picking it up well. So also, you can pick how long you want it.
Yeah, I don't know, but anyway.
But you can pick how long, you can change the length, it has anywhere, anywhere from 3 minutes is the shortest, or you can even go 1 minute, just depends what you want. You can do the different, things. You do it guided by a doctor, they have like someone that can speak to you and kind of talk you through the meditation. You can do it on your own with, different sounds. You can do what's called heart-centered mindfulness, with exercises given you by a doctor as
So
well.
so what have you done?
I've just done the basic essentials where it's the wave. I'm trying to go longer. Like I start off with 3 minutes.
And
10 minutes.
supposedly this is, the objective is to what?
So I mean, it depends on. Essentially, you're supposed to just kind of, I guess, mindfulness and meditation. You block it out. You learn to relax, and it's supposed to rejuvenate you, help you think clearer, relax you. You can use it. I mean, essentially.
Well, this is better if you wanted to use this than wearing that cap, you know, going around with that cap. And
Yeah, I mean,
this
you-
almost looks like it really doesn't, you can go out in public with this.
It's, I don't know, the way I think about it is like, it's almost like exercise
Yeah.
for your, like your mind. It's not quite a muscle the same, but if you can control it, then maybe you can control
Like
your
men-
anxiety, or you're in a pressure situation, or
Mindfulness.
you're gonna make a big decision. It's just a kind of way of harnessing that.
Yeah.
But not that I've just been doing it, but
And does it give you reports? Does it send
it
you anything?
does. So the way it does is when you coordinate. I put the video on. I guess what it is, but basically you fit the headband. You wait for it to make sure it's doing sound. So right now.
Calibration. Find a comfortable position and close your eyes. Take a deep breath. As you exhale, let go of any tension you might be holding in your face and jaw. Muse is now listening to your brain signals. Relax and let your mind flow naturally. Accept whatever you experience from moment to moment.
You're like we're in a yoga class, right?
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Wow. Yeah, that's good, that's perfect.
Welcome back. How are you feeling about the session today? You might be aiming for a
So
perfectly
that
calm
there are
session.
instructions and not.
This is totally natural.
We can skip it,
Uh-huh.
just so I know.
So it can be added to that chat box, like the therapy box. You can have everything, you know? And plus texting with humans, and then where humans need to interfere, where,
So you see it now, and it's
Yeah.
going, and the waves and the sound will change depending on how active my mind is.
oh,
And if you're quiet, you hear the birds, and they'll chirp, and that means you're doing a good job, and kind of reinforces it. This gives you a kind of countdown. When you're doing this, your eyes should be closed, kind of like looking at the time. I don't think that would be very relaxing.
This isn't like your app though, this is like the app.
No, this is someone else's
What's the
company.
thing?
I bought this, and we analyzed this.
Oh,
So,
okay.
but this is part of, this is their.
Our app website is us analyzing different.
This is what you like when you
technologies.
put like those pictures on the board.
Yeah,
Exactly.
That part's your
Yeah.
project.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Right.
That's what I thought, and then
I
she
designed
thought-
this, actually made this in the last couple of weeks.
No,
That's what I
I
go,
made
She
the app.
thought
as well.
that.
made that
See, he made the app and he made the device. And what have you been doing on your, and this is a B minus presentation, you know? So where does yours stand? According to this one, right?
that.
So
Right,
sell it for
right.
$280 on Amazon.
Right, and they were busy.
No.
Do you feel like it helps? Like,
So
He bought it. I told him just to do the 30
We were
days.
gonna return it, but I liked it. Do I think it helps? So is it mandatory? No, if someone can do it on your own, then you don't need this. If you can meditate on your own, you have it. There's many different ways. If you can read a book and do it, you can go to a yoga class and get a similar feeling, or any other class. For me, it helped, and it's kind of a way of talking you through it. I like that you can kind of hear it. Some people like no noise. I kind of like that noise background. They have like alarm clocks, things like that. But I like how it kind of talked and guide, and then it would also track my data. And so I think, as most things, when you track it, you do better.
yeah.
Whether it's eating, like some of the apps, right? You write down what you eat, or exercise, you write down, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Study. So it does that, and it's almost just like a way of making me do it because I want to do it, and I spent money on it. Like if you spend money on something, you're gonna want to not waste it. So it'll make me do it, and it's been something I wanted to do. So, but it's not by any you can. It's just like if you hire a personal trainer for weightlifting, right? It makes you go, it makes you do it, it keeps you on task. Where you can do the same
You
thing
don't
if you
need it,
can
yeah.
do all that stuff without it, obviously, and save the money. Then you don't need to do that.
And they're using it they're starting this, but you can think about for other types of, besides being mindfulness, that you could create.
So part of that, and when you measure it, you can see it right here, they actually have, do you wanna join a research program? Let's see, it puts it in, so they can track your data, you could sign up for clinical studies and they can give you things. And so, they can track all the other things in terms of your brainwaves. If they put you in a situation and they could tell you an emotional response to something sad happening or something good, and measure how that works, or if you gamble and certain things like that. So you can use it for,
That's part of this app.
so part of, well,
If you
the
sign up
app
for the study,
sells
then
it
you
to
get
make
that.
money as a
Oh.
way of meditation, is kind of like how they are selling it. But if you go on their website, which I can pull up and show you, different universities are using it as a way to gather information, like almost like crowdsourcing,
Oh, okay.
and signing up, and to gather information on all different types of studies and different things that people are studying with brainwave activity. Like you can put it on like a baby and say, okay, I can't tell if the baby's in pain or not, they're crying, but are they crying because they're hungry, or are they crying because they're cold, or are they crying because they're in pain? So you can use a way to measure the brain. Like, so they used to think like babies back in the day couldn't feel pain, but that's been completely disproven.
Are there, like, I've seen a documentary on babies before, and there's sounds and kind of like body movements that they do that tell you exactly why they're crying, or like if they're hungry, if they're tired.
Not that I found, I mean, there's, there's hundreds of reasons like why babies cry. And if you could tell from looking at the baby why they're crying, that would be impressive.
Probably make your job a little bit easier.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
I mean,
You wouldn't
every
even-
parent would be crying, I mean, then there, it could be
There
college.
may be an app for that, and then it recorded, but there may be after distinction,
So
when you
this
get
is,
in front.
so the other thing is like if I was a therapist and I wanted to prescribe this to a patient to help relax or anxiety or help deal with something, you can do that and monitor them, so I could sign up, so what I used, they could look at it and like my information would be going, just like all the healthcare apps that some people presented here. This is similar where they could track it, and so I could sign up with track rate, teach meditation, tangible results. I mean, these are all buzzwords that they're doing just to try and sell it to you. And I bought it, applying sicker, but if you want to do it as a professional and I can tell my patients to use this, I could follow with them and see how they're doing.
So there's a physician side of it.
Yes.
Therapists always.
They can have that. So as part of the research here, they just basically use that, and here are the different ways that they've been using it. And you can they have like the software for research that gathers data.
If you look up Priscilla Dunstan on Oprah, that's the one that I was talking about.
Maybe she's like that.
maybe she's magic.
Yes.
Right, right. She talked to the dead too?
Yeah, that's what
I see the aura, right, okay, we can go over that.
This could be life changing.
Okay, like this. Yeah, Oprah thing, okay. Okay. Jim will take that down. Watch my mom.
Wait, how would we make this louder?
About the age of 4 or 5,
it's just
my
her.
mother went such and piano and I was played by her tonight, having heard only one.
Oh, but only she can do it.
Yeah, like she.
Oh, okay, well.
She has a gift.
She has a gift like the one talking to your.
Maybe I can FaceTime with
your
her if I have a
dad.
child that's crying and she can tell
Yeah,
me what to do.
okay, she can tell, like the dead uncle, I see.
Doug Sims baby language, she's got her own Wikipedia page.
Okay, all right.
Declaim, is that
Right,
called?
right, right, the claim.
She's got a website, okay.
Okay, she has a baby language,
You
okay.
can actually listen to her describe it, like, they're pretty accurate, the cries are. I mean, I
You know,
don't
you
understand,
probably,
but-
you know, I bet you could, there are distinctions, just like you could hear those distinctions. After a while, what's the video? Okay. No, in terms of, even machines, I bet you after a while, after you could distinguish certain sounds, maybe that we're not even able. Okay, we're set. See each other soon. Stay with me if you have additional questions. Thank you, Bradley. Stay with me. Watch out for the clock.
You were driving.
It was me. I'm so sorry. I almost hit you with my
No,
car.
don't worry. It's always dangerous walking across the airport.
Yeah. Sorry.
I was crossing, people take a flight, and then, you know, they have to stop, but they don't always see when the car kind of stops. I know, sorry.
Oh, okay, that's good, when she's one of those drivers hit and run, you can
I
recognize.
know, I know where I'd find her.
Right, especially when the exam was coming in, you know,
Oh,
you
yeah.
could find her.
They're definitely here.
I'll
vouch for you.
No, I saw that
So,
before, she's not even.
I recommend you to go to doctor as soon as possible,
The one that's in my class.
because
Yeah,
I didn't
on
make
Wednesday.
that decision and I was not happy with it. Like I was like, oh, this normal cold will be gone by like 2 days. I was day 2 and I was dying basically. Like go tonight because they will give you 2 medication. One is
No, I'm not, I'm not
today,
wearing, no, I'm not
6
wearing this.
pills. You take 2 the first day, then 4 the next day, and then they give you another pill that lasts 2 weeks for you to take. I'm still taking and I'm not yet fully recovered.
Tommy, I'm so freaking out about cough. Is it?
So
in your?
Wednesday I'm open. After this Wednesday I'm open.
Yeah, so we have some.
By the way, I had a brilliant idea. I put this idea on with my professor. She's in English department. So business.
Oh, that feels great to be done science.
You'll be on the other side soon. You'll be on the other side.
We're
You'll
like
tell everyone, you'll be
more than
on the
halfway
other side soon.
under.
You're more than halfway done?
So
Yeah, but it's
our
only 3
diseases and
Like when
bias
Oh, I was like,
website.
an hour
They
and
all come
Oh,
under us.
yeah,
So
yeah,
we have
yeah.
medical,
And then, yeah, they're
nutrition,
presenting to-
psychology, and everything under us. And then if we can get it, I can kind of market it on Facebook. I know how to do that. For like monthly, maybe 5 months.
See you Wednesday.
For like 5 months, we can get it popular, and then we can have like news and all that people who use it come and put their unbiased opinion on it. And if we get it big enough, and we
That's
can.
what we'll work on next time. The only problem with theirs, there's a lot of, one is you need a permission, and 2, they're not evaluating any real product.
How about the nutrition one?
They don't have a product.
No, the product, like, I mean, for like the nutrition, they can go, okay, this restaurant is like this.
But they don't have it done.
Or they haven't done that. So how about if we use, we bring it on our own and do it ourselves? We can get you said we can get a grant and then we can bring a student
Yeah,
like, and
but let's do it, but what I'd rather do is, we'll talk about it, okay?
Yeah.
But the problem with theirs is, all they have is just the idea.
I understand.
And some of these ideas,
Are good.
some are better than others.
Okay. I believe like we
Yeah,
can.
but you got the right idea. What I wanna do is with thinking about it is this demo lab. What I wanna do is to have a number of demos, but what I wanna start off with is demoing a number of things that we
Sure,
have, right?
sure.
And maybe even demoing how to promote yourself on, how to promote in Facebook, you know,
I
and
understand.
and things like that, or there may be demoing that you actually have to see. And more is I bought the competitor views.
Sure.
Or
And then
when you're
comparison.
doing comparison, or when I was using Moon, I started doing not just for anxiety, but I had some tics or something like that that I wanted to do.
And then did it help, did it not?
Right.
Sure.
You understand?
Okay,
You
we can
understand?
talk.
Because that was, so let's talk on,
Wednesday, probably after, after
Right.
the class, 6 o'clock, okay.
okay?
Well, I recommend to go to doctor
Right.
As fast
Thank
as
you.
possible.
I appreciate it.
Because
I appreciate
I
it.
didn't make that healthy
Right,
choice and I'm
right.
regretting it right now.
I appreciate it.
Have a good day.
You're welcome.
How you doing, Dr. Rush?
All right. Got some kind of cold or something from all the students in the room. I think it's going around and give me something. So how are you doing? So you, when do you graduate?
Next semester.
Next month. Thank you for talking. Broadcast. So how are you doing in the labs? You caught up or what?
Yeah, we're finished with all the ones between our, well, now single respective groups. I think we just have like 7 left to do.
Okay.
Just 5 of us, we should be fine. Just, with Dan and I, we would have had like 20 left, so.
Okay. And you can make a contribution to them, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But what I think you should do is review everybody's work, rather than everybody submit. What happens is everybody submits and then they don't
Yeah,
look at it, because it's gonna be as a group as well, you understand?
Okay.
And then, you know, when other people do it, they do a much less good job than others, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
on the other side of the fence, kind of play the.
Hate versus not. True. They're not public, so. We can look at that one, I'm sure many emails with all of us on it, and if we can make it happen, it'd be great.
I'm done. Thanks, Sergio. How we all doing?
So Tony, when do you graduate?
Okay, that's what you got. She asked me to do it.
When do I graduate?
When do you graduate?
2019. Hopefully. That's what it is.
So what did we decide to do, guys?
We're gonna talk about some specific,
Okay, so how are you gonna do that, how are you gonna present?
Most of it will be oral. We wanted to show a small, 30 seconds from a film, Vice, was it Vice, the one with the social engineering? Just when we go to the part on social engineering.
Okay, and then you're gonna use TV, how are you gonna project? Remember, we don't have the HDMI.
Oh no, the majority of the presentation we can do without projection. Or, yeah.
I guess we can show the websites.
Yeah, there's the one website and then the YouTube link. So I can set that up whenever you're done with,
Okay.
I can set that up with. Windows always fails me. But it's like when it's quiet, you know, when you don't make noise. You guys been in touch with someone? Just a little voice. You do?
So, we have this final project that gave us like 3 weeks to do, that's due, and then you're supposed to present, now we're not. And then you gave us a final today, and then said like, oh, like, we could take home one, and he's like, oh, it's gonna be 40 hours, we're like, it's not enough time, like, there's other shit. He's like, well, look, alright, like, I'll make it available. Gives up, like, puts it online at like 10 this morning, it's due, Wednesday at like 11:59 p.m. And it's just like as much, if not more, than what we're doing for the project. Like, we don't have to do like the actual implementation of like the tables and stuff, but that's the easiest part. The one.
It's looking real pretty this week.
I doubt I'm sleeping the next 2 days.
I haven't slept in the past though. Except, what is it, Friday to Friday to Saturday.
Gone.
Everything good?
As in like,
solid 6 hours. Like,
this hurricane. This hurricane screwed everyone, so now if you don't have actual like dedicated times like study or do work, it's just, you still have to go to class and you study for other stuff.
That didn't work out that,
No.
when they set it up, you know? They thought they were gonna save time.
They screwed it. Especially like, my database class right now, like, we have an insane amount of stuff we have to do, like, over the next, like, slash 48 hours.
True.
Are you in that class?
Yeah.
423.
It's insane.
Like, this is.
The assignment and the final.
Yeah, like, I mean, like, I'm talking about, like, like, I've been, like, doing projects, like, on final, like, it took me forever to, like, figure out how I'm gonna organize stuff.
Yeah.
But this final is, like, even more, like, complicated, because he just doesn't tell us, like, what we're supposed to do.
Also,
Yeah, he doesn't tell you what to do, he
why
just
you
has a bunch
trying to
of information.
Yeah, and she's like, what am I supposed to do with this?
Yeah. I just heard a lot of
Okay,
people
but
saying.
here's a question for
on.
you. Why did you decide to wear slides on a day like this?
I don't know, I'll do it like one day tomorrow.
Bro.
I'm trying to.
Well, he's my
I have to go to my internship tomorrow and.
Not really, but like, I might as well be.
It might have been better to have it in class.
I mean, if I looked at that in class and he gave it to us, I literally just.
No, same.
Stuff about it. Yeah, like even like other computer science kids, like, you know, I'm computer science and like other kids, like even us, like we're like, you know, it's kind of, like, after that, kind of, yeah, the business, like new business kids. Have you started all your final?
I looked at it, that's about it. Doesn't say it should only take you 3 hours. Doesn't say it should only take like 3 hours.
That's a lie. That's a lie. That's such a lie. I've been looking at it for more than 3 hours and I can't even get my conceptual map done. It's just so all over the news, it does not talk about
Have you taken a class?
I don't really know what it is.
At the end, you'll, it's pretty like even with the grades.
Yeah.
I made the worst decision of my life.
You make one of those every week.
I know, right?
What was it this time?
Take a 10-minute nap before coming here.
What's wrong with
You
that?
just-
You said, yeah, yeah, it was so crazy.
Like the adrenaline is over there.
Not even, it's down. Just like.
When the nap is either too long or too short, it's like there's just that Goldilocks zone of nap.
There's no perfect nap.
No, there is. It's just the function.
You
the
gotta
function
hit,
of
you gotta
how
hit
it's
that 30-minute nap.
Yeah?
All about those 30-minute intervals.
Or like depending.
Technically, it's like, so for sleep, it's technically like 90 minutes, but if you're gonna take a nap, it's like 30 or 90,
Like my favorite is I'll do a 25-minute because it takes me about 5 minutes to fall asleep. So in that at the end of the 20-minute cycle, I'm like at a decent place to wake up. That's just how I nap, like how my sleep schedule is. But I know some people like if they wait for 20 minutes and then like were jolted awake, they see the end of the day.
Like 20 minutes of me trying to fall asleep.
I don't nap, I sleep.
Yeah, so you need at least an hour to hour and a half.
3.
That's not that's not.
At that point, it's not a nap.
Okay, folks, welcome back. Do a little bit of housekeeping. We have an exam this Monday and this Wednesday, right? Today's Monday, this Wednesday. I'll do a review for the exam on the 20th. All your labs are due uploaded, okay? Mark and Toomey, was talking about they wanted to do a presentation for you folks. So we'll start doing their presentation and then I'll finish with a review for your folks and then I'll end a bit early and then I'll answer any questions. One of the things when you're doing your group work or your labs, one of the things that I've noticed and I want to tell you before is you need to look at the entire group of what everybody uploads as a group to make sure that it's complete. And if it's not complete, you need to help each other in terms of getting it complete and well documented, okay? Rather than just putting up some screens and then when you look at it, you or no one else knows what you did and what happened. So make sure that all the labs are documented and before then that Wednesday that you turn it in to make sure that everything is uploaded for your groups, okay? All right, so I'm anxiously awaiting to hear what you guys wanted to present.
Okay, I'll give a brief introduction.
Okay.
So, hi people.
Hi. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, Professor. We wanted to show, because this is an information technology class and we felt that we're learning a lot about all the different systems that are in place for us to protect ourselves. We felt it was important to also show the opposite end of that, the hacking side. The side where you get to see how people actually penetrate different systems and then use that to their bidding. And Toomey and I just wanted to show you a couple of different products and a little bit of an extra explanation about social engineering to show you how these things work altogether.
So I mean, a lot of your business technology majors, you guys kind of are on that business side of what goes on when there is an attack. And as you say, you know, we want to protect against these things. But you want to know what you're up against. So Hack5, if you've never heard of them, actually they have a great YouTube channel where they actually use some of their products and show you kind of projects that you can do. And it's very great for seeing things that are out there for penetration testing as well as to protect yourself in general. But they make a lot of gear, and this gear is also
So this is their
Yes.
their e-commerce site called
Yes.
Hackshop.
Yes, so this is their e-commerce site. The reason I'm here is that a lot of the gear is kind of a very nice version of what either people make for themselves as hackers or aspire to purchase. So Mark can kind of start up with the Wi-Fi pineapples.
Correct. So essentially what these pineapples are is that they're small devices that you plug in to use for man-in-the-middle attacks. When you use a pineapple, it allows you to intercept Wi-Fi connections and hone in on all the people who are connected to that Wi-Fi signal, which means that if they would like, you can narrow down to a single individual that is on that Wi-Fi service and hack everything that they're doing. So you can see every website they're on, every link that they touch, and so on and so forth.
So it's a sniffer?
Exactly.
In some sense, I mean, it also depends on how you use it, right?
Well, you can see the traffic you're sniffing, right?
Yes, so you can use tools like Wireshark and see exactly what's in the packages, assuming they're not secured. You can also, things like that are more powerful, spoof an entire network. Instead of just being in between a device and the network, you can actually, for example, go to Starbucks and be Starbucks. It's a lot easier to do than one might think, and a lot easier to actually, get away with than one might think.
Do they have any disclaimers at the top here, or?
Actually, they have a lot of disclaimers in their purchase form.
Oh, in their purchase
about,
form, okay, because I'm
penetration
just wondering,
testing
because I
and
could
whatnot.
see a number of authorities going to this website and then making themselves open to that. So I was sure that their lawyers probably had a way to
Indeed.
tell them.
Indeed. At the end of the day, they're a company that makes devices for penetration testers.
Right. So,
That's the
yeah.
official. That's the
Okay.
official line. So yeah, Wi-Fi.
How you use it is, this was,
It's up to
it's up to the user. Okay.
But they're a great company.
It's like, this is like the bug bounties kind of on the way. These are, they can say that we've set this up for the white hats, not the black hats.
It's actually incredibly scary that a company like this can exist freely. I mean, that's the power of the free market. You can do things like that.
Indeed. So, spot the security risk to your company. Spot your $1 million walking out the door. Do you see it in this little picture? It's right here.
Right.
This little black box right here is called a packet squirrel. It's another form of man in the middle. This one is actually a small physical box that you can place either between a specific device and a network, or between a, I'll say it as Americans do, a router. We call it a router where I'm from. Between a router and the internet, and intercept a lot of traffic that way and work quite remotely. This is quite a big deal because it's actually a very, very tiny package. It's about this big. And it holds a 128 gigabyte SD card, the micro SD card. So you can store a lot of data. It can filter out. It's actually a little Linux machine. When powered, when not powered, it's just does passive tracking. But when you actually add a power source to it, it's a little Linux box that can actually filter through these packages and choose which ones to save.
And you can think about it that this is going to be, you can make these even smaller than that. And you can think about it in terms of disguising it.
Indeed. So this one is designed to fit into your net. You put a little tag on it that says IT do not remove. And no one's gonna touch it. If you saw that, if you saw that in a classroom somewhere and it was part of this setup, you wouldn't touch it, right? And that's kind of these things. So they have a couple of different other network implants. As you can see, the packet squirrel is that one. The LAN Turtle and the LAN Turtle 3G do something similar. They're also man in the middle. These are USB Ethernet devices. So using Universal Serial Bus, you can connect an Ethernet device as you do for a lot of computers these days, as they have fewer and fewer Ethernet jacks. And this is also used for packet sniffing as well as other forms of man in the middle. And can also be attached to a router, so you can get similar capabilities. It's actually quite scary, and 3G one actually connects to a 3G network, so you can wirelessly exfiltrate data.
Straight from the phone.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the kind of stuff. You can also use some of these tools on mobile devices, which we'll talk about in a second.
And this is Tumi's favorite, the rubber ducky. So this devious little device looks like our typical USB. However, they're actually keyboards. What they allow users to do is by simply plugging one into a computer, it can take up to 1,000 keystrokes per minute and capture just about anything that's on your computer the second you start typing.
So imagine a PowerShell window comes up and types in 1,000 characters in a minute and sends off a bunch of commands. You have no idea what it's doing, and it's doing this in a minimized PowerShell window. That is the fear with one of these. This little thing is very devious and very cool to play with. You can even plug it into Android devices, because Android devices accept standard USB keyboards. And a lot of Android devices actually allow you unlimited tries on pin codes, on pin codes, particularly with certain OS, certain versions of the OS. So you can brute force a phone, an Android device in a couple minutes using.
And here they give you a whole bundle.
Right. So
for $4.99, which was used to be $5.99.
Actually, anyone who's ever worked in IT, these things are actually really useful if you have to do a lot of deployment stuff. Anything that has a lot of commands, you can save yourself a bunch of time by writing scripts for these. that'll
It's
do all
like
the
little
commands for you.
macros. that you're-
There are multiple uses for
Exactly.
it.
They're like the little macros that you can put this in.
How would you connect it to Android?
With an adapter, it just
You
connects
just
right into the
adapt it.
main USB instrument where you
To give you guys a little clearer understanding, for those who may be unfamiliar, the way that this would work would be the same thing as, I'm sure you guys all use ad blocker of some sort. Have you ever had the moment where a pop-up will come up and then disappear? This is essentially the same action. So it'll basically show up, and if you don't click it fast enough, and you won't click it fast enough because modern computers, it will hack you, like, instant. And there's almost nothing you can do.
On
And
site.
what is Bash Bunny?
Yes, that's exactly what I was just about to mention. So the Bash Bunny is kind of like a supercharged rubber ducky, in that the Bash Bunny is actually a fully fledged Linux machine, and it has more than just the keystroke injection capabilities of the rubber ducky. It can also do Ethernet spoofing, so it can make itself look like an Ethernet device. So you can put a fake web page on it. When you plug it in, that comes up looking like real Facebook. Input your data, exfiltration. If you've ever seen Mr. Robot, it's a great TV show. There's a moment where they use a rubber ducky to exfiltrate passwords from a machine in about 30 seconds. It takes about 15 seconds in reality. That's a real hack. It's not for jokes. Like I really wanted to demo this for you guys today. Unfortunately, my rubber ducky did not come in the mail quickly enough, and my friend's one is currently in use. He works for a security company. But in about 15 to 30 seconds of physical access, you can exfiltrate a lot of data, and you can grab passwords from memory. So Chrome, as well as the operating system, store passwords in RAM as things are going on, and you can exfiltrate this data. It's pretty.
When you say store passwords, do you mean like the SAM file, or are you talking about like, is it trying to figure out what the password is?
There are tools such as Mimikatz, which is part of the Metasploit framework. Have you ever heard of Metasploit? You can basically get both hashed passwords from memory as well as plain text.
Okay, but isn't there like a if your password is longer than like 15 characters or something, it's like really hard to like I guess brute force it?
It's hard to brute force, yes.
Like really
brute forcing this
It's
doesn't
different.
brute force. This goes directly into memory, into the memory addresses, and retrieves
Goes
the
lower
data.
down.
Right. So it goes lower than brute forcing, because brute
So-
force you interface with the
So
front
it
end.
goes into the SAM file, I'm assuming, but isn't that encrypted?
Depends on the operating system, depends what's open, and depends on basically the tool.
That's what I'm trying to figure out how you're getting password if like the
I
SAM
mean,
file
look,
is
you
encrypted.
can actually, I loaded this up. You can look at the Mimikatz payload. The Mimikatz payload for the rubber ducky. As you can see right here, spawns a command shell, downloads Mimikatz from web server. Mimikatz is one of these payloads you can use for rubber ducky. I mean, there are millions of these payloads. They're open source in a lot of regards. The penetration testing community is quite widespread, and Mimikatz will dump passwords from memory.
Yeah, password dumping. That's what you would do with like PW dump 7. It'll like take the SAM file and dump it into like, but it's encrypted though, so you would need to like. That's what I'm asking.
Mimikatz brings out plain text.
The main thing that would lead to, the best thing that would save you in this situation really is just updating your systems. But for those people who don't, and there's a lot of people who don't, I don't know how Apple products work, but I know for certain Microsoft products, they basically force you to update almost daily. And if you don't have a device that updates constantly, you're vulnerable.
Yeah, it's an interesting landscape out there right now, because this tool still works even on some Windows 10 machines. Some Windows 10 enterprise machines have a certain level of extra encryption, but most machines are still somewhat vulnerable. So if you see a little USB key on the ground and think, boom, gang, think twice. Think twice.
Can you go back to the? Can you just scroll slowly through, just so like people can see like each of the devices on the list?
I mean, if you saw one of these in the library, you'd be like, Oz wins.
I'm plugging into the school computer.
There was actually, I think it was last year, there was a bunch of USB keys thrown off the balcony of the SAC, and one of them, or a couple of them were USB rubber duckies, and that wreaked some havoc. Some on campus, the guys from UMIT were saying, from the cyber office were saying something about that. I mean, these things are tiny, and this can be your entire company. This little thing can be your entire company gone. Your IP vulnerable, your access to your systems, especially if your router security is not strong. If you put this in between a router and the internet, they can have access to basically all your devices and forward to whatever they like.
And the reason why I had Toomey scrolling up and down is because, as he said earlier, we are the guys who are going to handle the business of this security, not necessarily the technical aspect of it. So it's crucial for us to at least know what these things look like, because all of them look like standard IT equipment. To the untrained eye, no one would bat an eye at any of this. They would just leave it in their systems. And as Toomey said, literally all it takes is a do not touch sign for someone to avoid it entirely. So if you don't know,
You'd be better off not even do not touch, because do not touch even, I think, raises a red flag.
Exactly.
I've never seen anything on do not touch, so you're more curious. Just
Exactly.
even, not even bothered.
so like the simple fact that all of these devices look like things that should be in a more advanced system are actually the things that are designed.
Or they just look
to
like
show-
regular USB.
Yeah, I mean, this in a backpack in Starbucks is, I keep coming back to Starbucks, because a lot of Starbucks still use WEP security, which, I mean, WPA isn't even safe, but WEP is, yeah. So, moving on, we wanted to talk a little about social engineering.
So the first part, like I said, was about the whole design of this. It's supposed to be something that is pleasing to the eye, so that way it distracts from people not understanding it. The other aspect of hacking is social engineering, the part where people sort of give up on the rules that are meant to support us for the sake of convenience or for the sake of helping another or being kind. And what you see is that small things like a baby crying or someone saying please or someone throwing a tantrum is enough for you to hack a system. And we have a couple of videos.
So we're just gonna play, not long, we're just gonna show a NVivo, social engineering.
You may wanna go to the mic.
Like a network test, but it's for the people network. We test those vulnerabilities, see where the holes are, and then help people learn so they can patch them.
Can we try some of this? Can we try some,
Yeah,
see if it works?
we probably could, have, Star Racer make some phone calls as.
Let's do it.
Sure. Do you want to do a sample phishing call?
What's phishing?
Phishing is voice solicitation, and basically what you do is you use the phone to extract information or data points that can be used in a later attack.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Who are you gonna call?
Maybe I'll call your cell phone provider
Okay.
and see if I can get them to give me your email address.
I bet they're good. I bet they have my back. But yeah, go for it.
Just a bit of background about this film. This guy actually basically went to DEF CON. You know what DEF CON is? It's like the biggest hacking convention in the planet. Like if you go to DEF CON, don't take a single electronic device. But he basically got a bunch of people and said, hack me, do your worst, and let's see what happens. So this video is about that. This is
I'm gonna spoof from your number, so it's gonna look like it's calling from you.
Okay.
Hi, I'm so sorry. Can you hear me okay? My baby, I'm sorry. my husband's like, we're about to apply for a loan and we just had a baby and he's like, get this done by today, so I'm so sorry. I can't call you back. I'm trying to log into our account for usage information and I can't remember what email address we used to log the account. The baby's crying and can you help me? Awesome.
In just 30 seconds,
gmail.com?
Jessica gets my personal email address.
Now, if I
He's a good actor.
Add our provider on our account,
You know what I mean?
to make changes, how would I need to go about doing that? You would have to send me a secure PIN through a text message? Yeah, well, the thing is, I don't think I'll be able to receive a text message if I'm on the phone. Oh, I'm not on there either? So I thought when we got got married, he added me to the account. Okay, my name
Jessica uses my girlfriend's name and a fake social security number
5127.
to set up her own personal access to my account.
Wait, I'm sorry, so there's no password on my account right now? Can I set that up?
She even gets the support person to change my
Thank you
password.
so much for your help today.
So she just basically blocked me out of my own account.
I'll get her fed after this. Alright, thank you.
Holy shit.
They put
So
the music in the background.
they just gave you.
Yeah, this is actually real. This is, he's
No,
not-
but I mean, but they add.
Yeah, for the
music in.
Can you show the second part of the video?
Book access to my entire cell phone
You're
account.
gonna have to go on and change your password now because it's Jess, my name.
And all it took was a crying baby and a phone call.
Yes.
I really thought that my cell phone company would protect me. I mean, like, this is the most basic stuff, and they're not doing it. And if they're not doing it, you know all these other businesses aren't doing it either.
And that's the key point, is you guys are gonna be running those businesses, right? Or your company is going to be doing that, or you're gonna be protecting your users. I mean, that's down to how you train your people, right? But it's very important we know that this is something that can happen. Whilst we have this here, there's a little other part that we kind of wanted to show you, which comes back to what we were just talking about, and that's to do with this gentleman here.
This is the world's biggest hacking convention. It's hacking everything, hacking social, hacking hardware, hacking software, hacking various systems.
I asked Dan Tentler, a well-known security researcher, to turn all of his firepower on me.
I did get into quite a number of things that I found.
So what were the first things you did? How did you start hacking me?
I quickly found your Squarespace blog and had an idea. Basically what I did was created a bogus Squarespace site and sent an email to you, a fish asking you to go to this website, run the certificate installer.
And I did it, because I'm an idiot.
So once you ran that, it gave me access to your computer, and I created several fake pop-ups that looked like system pop-ups that would ask you for your credentials.
You didn't even have to have my passwords.
No, you gave them to me.
I gave them to you.
So I stole your 1Password keychain.
And 1Password is where I store all my other passwords. So effectively
And
by...
your social security number and your Amex stuff and all your stock trading and bank information. I can send email to everyone in this room as you. I am you right now, if I wanted to be. If my evilness is working correctly, it should actually be taking pictures of your desktop and pictures through your webcam every 2 minutes. And I have been watching you for about 2 days now. In coffee shops, at your mom's house, on a plane. Here's your editing stuff, there's you.
Oh my god, so this is literally...
Every 2 minutes.
Through my webcam.
Yeah, through this guy.
How badly could you have messed up my life?
I could have made you homeless. I could have made you homeless and penniless.
How would you make me homeless?
I have control of your digital life in its entirety. I have all your credentials, I have all your access to all your financial information, all your work information, all your personal information. I can pay people with your bank account or your Amex account. I am you. I can fully impersonate. The only thing I couldn't doctor would be like your fingerprints.
This is like as bad as it
It's
gets.
ridiculous, yeah, it's bad.
So it turns out that Dan Tentler is very good at his job. I mean,
This right here, what you see of the taking photos of from your webcam and of your desktop, we were talking about the Metasploit framework just a moment ago. These tools are part of the Metasploit framework, which is openly available for you to use on the internet. Obviously, you don't do this without permission on the system you're doing it on. But yeah, it's pretty scary.
Yeah, we really wanted to show you guys just
Did
how
you
to
ever
do-
try it? Tell me on yours.
Metasploit? Oh yeah, I've gotten a Meterpreter, which is the one you can use to get the webcam thing working. It doesn't turn on the light. It doesn't raise any red flags. It lives in memory and then dies whenever.
Well, think about it, and this is your webcam, but just think about your phone. That's so easy to, and now source that you can just take your phone and then start recording. You put your phone down and it's starting to take video, it's starting to take recording.
Audio recording with big
Right.
microphones.
Hackers are doing it through applications now, actually.
Yeah,
Like the
but
simplified
but your
vision.
phone, because even with this, you're not turning that on. How often do you turn on your phone?
Indeed.
Okay.
Point being, it's easy to talk about security from oh, we can protect this, we can do that. It's once you realize the tools that are out there and the power that's available at people's fingertips, to sort of, you know, cause harm, you start to take things a lot more seriously. I can definitely tell you that ever since I started learning about penetration testing and cybersecurity, my passwords have doubled in length and entropy. They're you know, all unique. My devices are all encrypted. I have no more faith in the ability for anyone's systems to keep me safe. Yeah. That's
What
about
you
it.
guys should realize is that our jobs are going to be a lot more difficult as things move more towards technology being an everyday item. It already is at that point, but the fact that everything is going to be online puts us accountable for all of this. Maybe not to the same extent as the tech head of a company. However, we are the businessmen of IT, so it's our job to understand these things and be aware of it. Because in that earlier show where you saw the lady convince the phone company to get all those credentials, you know, how many clients in a large company like, say, Delta or even the financial aid office, like how many of you have been in the situation where you've called frantically trying to get them to help you out? Like, this is a very real thing. There's a lot of consequence to doing things like that, but your clients and your hackers will both act like that. So it's really difficult to be in the position that we're about to be in, but knowing what's best to do in those situations will allow us to filter through that.
Highly recommended watch, by the way, the rest of this. Highly recommended.
Just press.
With Dr. Rush's permission.
Oh, she's enjoying it too.
But you know, look at those other ones. But basically, you know, you're always looking on the other side, you know, on terrorists, that you see the magazines on how to create a bomb. They give you the instruction how to do the conditions. Those bombs, what kind of effect, you know, how to get a grid. What was the one that was watch hackers, look at that, break into the US power grid. So even, you know, you think about a little bomb that some idiot is gonna make on the internet, you know, or the pressure cooker, how many fatalities will that do versus how to take down the whole power grids of companies. You know, just the individual of just taking these individuals is nothing compared to the whole infrastructures. And where that hasn't happened, it's amazing. And then you have the how-tos. You can sit all day
Precisely.
and take all these.
For entertainment, I
Well,
watch these videos, and you can literally,
right.
you know, go and see.
Bash Bunny
And
video.
there's a huge market niche for this. Like, the amount of hackers just throughout the US is huge.
Both ethical and less so.
And that underground. And then when you think of now the Bitcoin becoming so pervasive, that all your payment systems will be going through.
Yeah, just last
Yeah,
week there was a $30 million Bitcoin wallet that was stolen from a gentleman, and that was, I mean, at this point, you know, to have a Bitcoin wallet is huge at this point because the blockchain has become so big, and most Bitcoin wallets you need to have the actual entire chain. But yeah, it's frightening.
Yeah, like hacking is the same. If you guys know about anything about Bitcoin, there's a second place competitor, as many people would call it, called Ethereum. And Ethereum had a similar problem many years ago where someone hacked their system, and Ethereum was caught between keeping the hack in their blockchain or erasing it and then starting anew. And because the two communities were split in how they would decide what to do, they had to split it between Ethereum Classic and Ethereum itself, the version that is used now. And the reason that they did that is because the integrity of the system versus the money that the system would have lost as a result of it. I believe the amount that was stolen was somewhere between like 13 to 60 million, give or take. And the fact that something like that can happen is enough to destroy a company. So you have to be aware that things like this do.
But this whole underworld here too, my chain is not even hacking into the Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, but the idea it's easy for payments for all these systems. So basically, you can sell your wares easily as well and not be tracked. when this is being, okay. Well, you can see, it's the same thing on the DEF CON, where they have all the FBI and all the other government there floating around and also trying to look for, they're trying to be cool and they're trying to look for recruits.
The,
You know, and saying, hey, come work for us on our side.
the US government has actually been really good on this. They're actually probably the biggest contributor to like the entire hacking industry, in that not only do they fund a lot of hackers and hire a lot of hackers after they commit crimes, but they also are the biggest contributor to the Bitcoin community. Like, other than the original founder, the US government is the biggest holder of Bitcoin. Just to give you guys a reference of what, you guys know what Bitcoin was originally used for when the market was first introduced. It was used for black market dealings, and the US was the one who had the most money in the game.
Is there any way of knowing how much they have right now?
I wouldn't say. I
Right.
believe there's
It's
13
technically
million.
it's technically in the ledger, but you can't know.
Yeah.
Well, that's the whole purpose, you won't be.
Yeah,
Yeah,
everyone
there's-
technically knows, but no one knows.
There's 13 million in the, right now there's 13 million Bitcoin in circulation, and the founder, I can't say his name. Satoshi Nakamoto. Yeah, he owns about 1 million, but he's keeping it off the market. So the US government probably, I would assume, has somewhere between 2 to 3.
Has anybody found out who he was?
No.
It's still
It's
unknown.
still-
There are a couple
It's still
theories.
unknown whether it's a single person or multiple people.
All they know is that he stepped away from it, I believe, in 2011.
Wait, how did, so the
I
people
was
who,
watching a video sometime around then, he's kind of like just disappeared and no one's seen him since.
Yeah.
so the people who manage it now, how did they like, be able to come in power over that if they're not sure who started in the first place?
Well, the whole thing about Bitcoin is it's a decentralized community, so it's all built on consensus.
Well, I mean, who manages the technology currently?
It's just blockchain, which basically like it knows who has had it, like according, like basically cross references with everyone else.
No, what I'm saying is like
no one
I know,
regulates
if they like say they wanna change something though, like who
You
would be
can't.
the
You
It would have to be through consensus, like you would have
Yeah,
to
so
vote.
It would just have to be through like public consensus.
Yeah, I mean, an example of that is the Ethereum split, right? There was a similar debate about Bitcoin. They wanted to split the coin,
They did it twice.
Yeah, they've already done so twice, and that basically means the entire community has to agree, because then the miners have to agree to split the system, basically create 2 separate ledgers, right? And create the blocks going from there.
And the two splits, well, in the cryptocurrency community, it's called forks. For Bitcoin, is Bitcoin Gold and Bitcoin dollars.
Everyone understands what like the blockchain is built on, right? Just as a summary.
What is, like, how do you mine Bitcoin?
That's a more complicated question. But the long and short of it is, you get yourself a very powerful machine, and you either join a group of other miners, which is what's currently more common these days, given that it's so difficult now to mine Bitcoin. And you basically all share your computing power to validate transactions, because that's what Bitcoin mining is, right? Cryptocurrency mining is basically validating transactions and then grouping those transactions together in blocks and adding them to the rest of the ledger, right? And so that's the blockchain, because you chain all those blocks. And that's what mining technically does.
But essentially, you're just solving a very, very difficult math equation.
How does that make you money though? That's what I've been.
Well, every transaction generates, every mining transaction generates a new bit of
Is it
currency.
supposed to pay you a small bit?
It makes
Or no, it generates a bit.
It generates
Yeah,
it.
it generates.
It's called, there's something called a hash function, right? And the hash function basically dictates how over time, or how as the blockchain grows, how much more difficult it gets to mine cryptocurrency. So it's an exponential function. So if you were mining in 2013, you could pretty easily done it on 1 GPU in your home computer and actually generated a decent amount of Bitcoin. Today, validating a transaction is a minute fraction of a Bitcoin. And obviously it takes a lot of power to do so. I mean, you can put entire server farms to work. Mining Bitcoin is just about offsetting your costs and then actually
So
generating
like,
profit.
where is this ledger, and like how do they add to it?
Everywhere. Every single person mining
Has the ledger.
has the ledger.
The same exact one.
And every single person's wallet is the ledger. Until you take that wallet offline, in which case you only keep track of the ledger up to a certain point, and then when you want to update it, you connect it back online, and the rest of the ledger gets published. Back in the day, you could put your ledger on, you could put the entire blockchain on a small drive. Today, it takes a lot of space to store the entire ledger. So your Bitcoin wallet is actually quite physically, in terms of storage, physically dense. Most people are using online services these days though, because just keeping track of that much physical stuff.
Isn't it worth a lot less too on Bitcoin?
Sorry?
Bitcoin mining, like when you find, isn't, cause like a few years ago, it was like worth more, you get more money for
Well,
mining?
when you mine, you still get a coin.
No, yeah, but
the only
it's-
difference is just that it takes a lot more power, like energy.
No, I'm
to-
talking about what
to
it's,
mine.
how much money you get out of it, like.
That's because the single Bitcoin
Cuts in half.
Yeah, it cuts in half, that's what it was.
No, yeah, the reward cuts in half every so many coins.
Yeah, every like a few years or something.
That's why they're saying like once
Every
it
like
gets
decade.
once it gets so small that there's only going to be so many coins out there because it's going to be so minimal that no one's going to.
Because the idea is to artificially create rarity. That's the point of Bitcoin, of the hash function, is to artificially create rarity so that eventually you deplete the resource, right? It's like if you're mining gold, you deplete the resource, it becomes so hard to find that it might as well not be finding anymore.
So it won't be good. And then you can think of it, and then it's with the ICOs, and now people are raising funds based on Bitcoin, so.
But it's also, there's the security risk in that, right? I mean, you look at platforms that, and this has been a problem ever since the first few cryptocurrency exchanges, is that they're also vulnerable. They're companies and they're just as vulnerable to hacks. And people have managed to steal large sums of Bitcoin, which are pretty much untraceable, right?
That's the key.
And the worst part about it is not only that it's untraceable, but it's not even governed by law. So
Yeah, it's not
you
regulated.
can.
And
Exactly,
it's
so-
not backed, even if somebody gets into a bank, at least you're with the FDC and you have some.
But I thought they were trying to
remote.
regulate it.
They
They've
do,
been
but like the
fighting.
main problem with it is how do they tax something like this?
Right. I know like the chief financial somebody was trying to regulate it, left the government and capitalized on it and became like.
Yeah, no, it's gonna, but that's also the.
Consultant to.
It's actually better
To
than it's not
regulate your
regulated.
Bitcoin.
Wait, so with the mining,
Bank
are you
keeping power.
creating more Bitcoin or are you just like making more of the finite amount like available?
No, you are creating, every mining operation creates fresh Bitcoin.
The thing is that the Bitcoin caps itself at 21 million. So once the 21 millionth Bitcoin is found, that's when mining is pointless.
So it counts for the 21 million, like it has, okay.
Yeah, I mean, the ledger, as I say, if you want to describe I'd say the best definition of any blockchain system is a distributed, decentralized ledger, meaning it tracks every single transaction from inception, right?
That's a what?
So it's a lot of bank statements. essentially.
Yeah, it's like an accounting system.
It is an accounting system.
Exactly.
If it's creating new Bitcoin, doesn't that devalue it, almost like create inflation within Bitcoin?
It's supply versus demand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is also, that's what the hash function is for. The hash function is what makes it harder and harder over time. It basically, the mathematical algorithm it takes to validate transactions, it gets harder and harder over time to create rarity, right? So as it becomes harder and harder to mine, it's like oil.
How's it getting to the point where it costs just as much in electricity to do it as you make?
Yeah, I mean, we pretty much reached that point
It's
a couple of
past
years
that.
ago in some senses for most small systems.
Bitcoin alone uses more electricity than Nicaragua.
It's one transaction could power a U.S. home for 9 days.
Seriously?
What is that currently?
Why do people even do that anymore then?
Because some people have enough distributed systems. When you have
The
enough
money
distributed
farm.
systems,
And it's not really bad.
and then that's where botnets also come in.
And I mean, if you think
Or
about
the
the
botnets.
if you think about the return, like if you invested $100 in Bitcoin in 2011, you would now be worth. Let me get the exact number.
I mean, I remember when I first heard about Bitcoin, one Bitcoin was $70. $70. And it was like, okay, yeah, there's this new thing, but it's kind of weird. No one really knows what's gonna happen with it. Fast forward a few years later, when I actually had half a Bitcoin, it was worth about $300, and I sold it. And that was a big fat L, because obviously, last week that would have been worth about $7,000. So
You know how much Bitcoin's worth now?
right now, how much half a Bitcoin?
Oh, half a Bitcoin is worth right now.
I can tell you what the current.
Do you guys think since we don't have any more net neutrality, companies could just like slow down your traffic completely if you try to buy Bitcoin?
Yeah.
Yes, if they
that's the
kill net
point.
neutrality, technically that's a possibility.
Oh, they are.
You can block
There's
all
no if, they are.
exchanges.
You guys need to
Right, and
petition
look at that
for
curve.
Like that's important because killing net neutrality is like taking away the First Amendment in a sense.
It is.
Yeah,
Um,
someone told me about Ethereum like last spring, and I kind of like just forgot about it. It was about $50 then. It's about $4.20.
Yeah, it's like $400.
Kind of really pissed at myself for not listening.
But yeah, so if you had $100 in Bitcoin in 2011, it would be worth $3,773,758.90.
But where do you transfer that though? Like, what bank do you go to? Like, hey, can I get this money? Like,
There are exchanges.
Yeah,
Coinbase,
so
Coin
they take
Exchange.
like 10%.
And people will pay top dollar for it.
Okay, so there are exchanges.
It's like the stock market. There's always someone looking to buy. And always
Especially
someone
the
looking to
U.S.
sell.
government, they will
Well,
they will pay you in Bitcoin.
Since net neutrality, so like, what's gonna
Right.
happen to this?
But you see, before I don't want to hijack your entire thing.
No.
The big part that a lot of people are missing, and I think this is important for you guys going into business. The big thing that a lot of people are missing is they're so focused on cryptocurrencies themselves that they've actually ignored the technology underlying it, and that's the idea of blockchain.
Yeah.
Blockchain is super powerful. The whole idea of being able to have a distributed ledger system, new companies, new startups are, for example, looking at systems that will allow you to track a product, for example, from inception or from source all the way to consumption. So in your house, if we trace backwards, in your house you have an Internet of Things fridge, right? Keeps track of your fruit consumption. From that fruit, you can go back to which store you bought it from, which warehouse it was stored in, what plane it was transported on, which central repository or forex it was in, all the way back to the farm it came from when it was first individually tagged, and say, this was the day, this was picked, this is the information on that yield, the area it comes from, the farm it came from. And that is the potential with blockchain technologies, that we can revamp entire systems that have existed. Amazon, for example, is working on blockchain for its own products, right? From where it gets its products to where it delivers them, and sometimes even beyond. So cryptocurrency is huge.
You can change entire industries with it. You can, like, even the housing industry is going to be changed with blockchains because it can show historical data on ownership and problems that have happened throughout the history of a home. The same process can happen for contracts. And music industry, it's actually becoming very popular to use blockchain technology for music contracts to distribute the royalties for each person in that contract.
And that's where programming is going to be becoming important, because now you have the smart contracts where you're going to be in each interaction, then you're able then to write the rules.
Yep. And a lot of banks are going to lose middlemen because of this, and which is why a lot of banks are even trying to create cryptocurrencies of their own, which is kind of counterintuitive to what the entire point of what cryptocurrency is. But hey, if you can get people to buy in, that's all that matters.
Like UBS, who actually always takes positions against cryptocurrency.
They say they do, but they flipped on the other side.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying.
They tell you that they're on that side.
This is my bank in Switzerland, and I can personally tell you that they actually are working on their own blockchains for various industries, including, of course, their financial service.
Yeah. And they have their own coin too.
Now, this is more of a business question, but isn't it kind of concerning that there's nothing backing Bitcoin? Like, there's no reserve or anything. There's no intrinsic value to it.
US dollar.
Yeah, it's all made on fiat.
Gold
7 years ago.
We're based on fiat. Essentially, the amount of people who say, I want this, is enough for you to place your price. And if people are willing to pay whatever price you say to have whatever product you have, then that's allowed. Which is the same concept that's used for Bitcoin and other.
Same concept that's used for the United States dollar.
Yeah.
The truth of what props up the United States dollar isn't the U.S. economy because it's mostly in debt. Isn't the military might of the United States. What really is that enough businesses are willing to trade in it and say this is a safety platform for us to use. If you look at the Swiss franc is so valuable because it's stable, right? Which means people want it as somewhere to store and to park their money and say, okay, like this is not going to, suddenly lose its value.
Yeah, inflation wouldn't affect it as much. Like, what you find is that almost all of this, including cryptocurrencies today, the reason why they're so popular is more based on press, really, than anything else. The amount of attention that it gets is what really causes the demand to drive up, which then pushes the price.
During a rally, Bitcoin price can be correlated with Google searches.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, like, what was it, last Thursday, the price of Bitcoin had another jump. It jumped up to like 17, and then it dipped again back down. Like, literally, that was in the course of a class. I was in Dr. Plant's class when that happened.
What happened?
The price of Bitcoin jumped like a good $5,000.
Yeah, it wasn't 19.
Yeah, when it went up
You
to
said
19.
5,000. You jumped 5,000 in like 45 minutes.
Yeah, there's some interesting spikes on the chart if you get close enough on a day-to-day basis, and it's media attention.
What does Plant think of all this?
Huh?
What are Plant's opinions on this?
Oh, he said to focus on class.
While you're making the money.
Yeah. But he said if you cash out, then like he wouldn't be mad if you left. Like this is his words, not mine. I think the exact quote was like, "If you cashed out, why are you here?" But department chiefs, they can do that.
That's fair.
Okay.
But yeah,
Very
never
good.
found the blockchain. Okay, that's about sums up.
Yeah.
That's a totally different direction. For
Sorry
what
for the
we're
tangent.
doing. I'm glad we had a great discussion on it.
But this is really, this is not gonna go away.
No.
And you're gonna see it.
If anything, we need to be at the forefront of the next wave that takes full advantage of blockchain. Otherwise, you'll find yourself on that lagging edge of industry. Anyone in financial services who does not embrace blockchains, anyone in any industry that has to deliver a product. If you do not embrace it, industrial engineering is about to change entirely. The entire landscape of how you keep track of anything from start to finish is all about to change.
And then globalization. And when people are narrowly saying we're just gonna go national, we're gonna look inwardly, that's just the opposite.
This is the
world.
next wave of industry. This is how global becomes the absolute norm.
Okay, very good, excellent. You wanna give them a show of hands? Very nice. So we can, look at, I believe this is gonna be the next, wave that is gonna go, and now people are thinking about the bubble, that it's gonna even go further. It will go down, but it's just gonna go back up on it. Okay, so we have an exam. What do we need to know about the exam? Look at your assignments. Ready? It's not gonna be cumulative, but it's the parts from the last exam. So we'll be 7, 8, 11, and 12. It'll also be sections 5 and 6 of the Asaka. And if I look at 5 and 6.
Wait, sorry, you said 7, 8, 11, 12?
Yeah.
So 7, 8, 11, and 12 now?
And 6 too, right?
6,
No,
7.
no, we never did 6.
We never, and 6. We never, okay.
7, 8, 11, 12? Yes.
And
then 5 and 6 for myself?
7, 8, 11, and 12. And then sections 5 and 6 from the Asaka.
Okay.
We'll do 7 and 8 from the Asaka, and the Asaka, And there'll be open-ended questions.
Wait, I think you said 5 and 6.
Yeah, 5 and 6, okay, sorry.
7.
You just said 7.
Oh, 5 and 6. From, the SAC is only up to section 6, right?
Or section 7.
And then section 5, we had gone over last time on incident responses, the business continuity plan. You can have a open-ended sheet with acronyms, you know, like the BCPs, the DRPs. Let me just go back. On the know the difference between an event and an incident. Here are some of the examples of it. Look at figure 5.1 of attack vectors, a description and examples for figure 5.1. See all the supply chain considerations, all that's gonna be in the big, you know, in that blockchain instead of the supply chain, we're gonna be talking about the blockchain later on.
Wait, could you do what you just said?
Yeah, that was just a side comment, don't worry about that. You can, section 6 is the advanced persistent threats. You can need to know what the threat landscape is. Kind of interesting that you can see here, Europe always does threat landscaping, and they try to figure out, you know, what's the change in the ranking from last year to this year. You can kind of give an idea here where what has been going up. You can see here of ransomware, identity theft, insider threats. You can see this. It's still, people aren't even aware of them, insider threats. And then of course here the physical damage and theft losses. Increasing, what's been stable, what's been going up, what's been going down on the threat. And then basically you can look at the advanced persistent threat life cycle. And what is basically, this is a new threat in the way that people are staying on your system a lot longer. It's not just coming in and going out, but the characteristics here is that idea of being stealthy and persistent, long term. The focus is on reconnaissance. So be aware of what the APT or that advanced persistent threats are and how they're going to be persistent. What are the APT types and their impacts? And then this is the key here. Mobile technology, the vulnerabilities and their threats. Basically, people haven't been paying attention. And this is what even Mark and Tumi were talking about, is activity monitoring, data retrieval. You can see that pictures, video, retrieval, still videos, share functions, covert, and here is the idea when you do that share functionality, you can see that all the time. All the stars and so forth, oh, how did they get all my pictures, you know? How did they get all my videos, right? The geolocations.
Oh, the geolocation, I was working on a project at the hackathon with UHack, and using Twitter's API, you can get so much information. So much information is encoded in one single tweet, and when you recall that information from the API, there's about 2 pages of data per tweet. A lot of that is just the machine you were on when you posted it, you know, what browser you were using, where you were when you posted it. The amount of information is staggering.
Do you think you're secure? Unauthorized here, you can see here. So this was basically on what's new. The sensitive data leak risk. Look about the identity, your credentials. You know, that's also a key here, you know, of all those software and all these sourcing companies that are saying store all your passwords with us, you know. How vulnerable are they, you know, that they don't even have to go anywhere. What else is important here? Just bring your own devices. IoT's do's and don'ts. This is gonna be a big issue here. Okay, and then the cloud here, the risk of the cloud, having it all in one place. So know the risk of the cloud, what are of loss of governance, isolation, data protection, the malicious insider, see there. And this is just benefits. So basically, focus in on more of the risks. We all know the benefits, right? The scalability, but what are the risks here in the cloud? And here's just a little knowledge check. So you can go through the end of those sections too, where you have the questions at the end too, multiple choice questions.
So just to verify, it's 7, 8, 11, 12, and 5 and 6 from my side.
Yeah.
Okay.
Enough?
11, 12.
We're not really looking at section 5 that much, right? It's mostly 6 for you.
Yeah, 5, we went over 5. 5 in business continuity planning, event versus, 5 as well. 5 and 6. And I would look at 5 and 6 for open as a question. Okay?
As far as the chapters are concerned, like just key terms and stuff like that?
Mm-hmm. The key terms, and then the chapter, and also the quizzes. Okay? What else? You set?
Anything cool in your news? Fair enough.
I'm set. I'm ready. You are. Thank you again.
Thank you, Dr. Rush.
Thank you.
My pleasure. It was very good. Nice presentation.
Thank you.
It scares us all. Another one to be underneath the mattresses. I'm just waiting for that, that cyber terrorism. Everybody's thinking about, a little truck going somewhere, or see today in New York City, this guy's strapping himself next to Times Square, but think about taking down all these grids. That's gonna be scary. Or the water, any of these kind of issues. But anyway. And then you think about everybody dealing with all those automobiles, right? Just basically people taking control. I've seen even talking to some of the guys that are doing some of this, so they can say, we can take this guy and just drive him off the field. You know what I mean? You take it with your car, If you want to hit somebody, you don't have to have that drone go down. Just have them.
Just hack the car, lock the doors.
Take that car and bring them off that thing. Okay.
I like how you laugh when you find out, that's horrible. You just laugh at my
No.
actually so fucked up. Did he really just like pick up all his stuff?
I'm never home, and when I'm home, we just like study.
How do we know that he left for
The
good?
grades that come up.
I knocked on his door, 90%
It shows your most recent,
and when I went to open it, all it shows
you
was
tapped at it, but my higher
all he
grade
knows
was
that his bad
the worst
friend.
So I just wanted to make sure the higher grade goes in.
Yeah, and that's fucked up part, because I texted him before he's gonna have grandma, he's like, yeah, I'm gonna have it, I was like, I need to know when, because the man was texting me. I have it tomorrow after.
Back the next day.